Mitra Sorrells in the PhocusWire studio at the Phocuswright Conference, and today I am joined by Global Managing Director for Travel and Transportation Industries at IBM, Dee Waddell. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
So you talked this morning on the center stage about blockchain, a packed house in there. I think that's a term that gets a lot of attention, certainly. Seems, some people write it off as a bit of a buzzword,
Sure.
but clearly you were making the case that there's a lot of business value. So talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, I brought up the concepts of hype versus hope, because there definitely is hype where we can talk about business models, and I share an example of a business model that is touting that home sharing, kind of an Airbnb-like home sharing, I can do for zero commissions, zero booking fees, and also give the users, loyalty points or rewards. Yeah. I'm like, well, how does that business model work?
Sounds too good to be true.
It does sound good to be true, and it's a little bit like the boom, because we don't know how cryptocurrency, and that in this specific case, it was about the cryptocurrency. I don't want to go too far on that, but it was very interesting because the business model is so different in these new startups that we're now trying to figure out. Okay, you've got startups testing new business models, and in the enterprise world, companies have all the data. So roughly about 80% of the data is within in enterprises. Okay. Versus the 20% out. So how do enterprises then look at these new business models and new ways frankly, it's about revenue streams for the enterprises. Right. And what we're seeing is blockchain can provide the basis of these discussions. A little bit hype, hopefully more hope, but there is real principles behind this where you can actually see value for an enterprise. And you'll see some startups actually, believe it or not, the crypto side, there's been a lot of speculation, but there's been a lot of money made as well, and lost. Right. But it's interesting. But definitely we see blockchain as a value creator, for enterprise and startups alike.
So trust is a word we often hear when we talk about blockchain, and that's really one of the core values of it. So tell us a little bit more about that. How is trust kind of built into a blockchain system?
Yeah. So we clearly know that the world is being disrupted in many different ways, and I think I'd like to start out with trust. There's a lot of issues with trust with cybersecurity. You've got trillions, literally, I think it was $2 trillion by 2019 that is on cybersecurity type issues and crimes, right? So the amount spent on that is huge. 1 in 15 people have identity theft, right? So there are significant issues just in the trust space. So there's a lot of disruption in that. We see, of course, there's technology disruption, and then we see, of course, there's business disruption about just companies being alive. Now, what we see in blockchain is the ability for a technology to provide, in a digital world, the ability to make sure that you are dealing with, so an identity, that you know who you are dealing with, that's trusted, that's, I won't be using our terms, but that is not it's tamper-proof. Okay. Right? So you can't hack it. It's much more secure. Okay. And then the transactions as well can't be hacked. So you want identity, the people in the network or wherever, you want them to know who they are in a digital world, but also the transactions. Now, and I'll talk about the type of transactions that blockchain are best at. It's around assets, not necessarily just information that can be copied, like pictures, emails. So this is about real intangible and tangible assets that you can store on a blockchain that then become part of this network of, we call it the distributed ledger. Right. But how do you transfer assets today? So if I have a car, there's a whole lot of paperwork that I've got to trust, the state, the national laws and so forth of transferring the registration. That can be done successfully and easily on a blockchain because there is trust in that transaction, in the technology itself, versus with the middleman and others. Hopefully that helped.
It does. I'm curious, do you think, as I'm hearing you talk, I'm thinking about the fact that I think the fact that blockchain is tied up with cryptocurrency, and there has been, that's been a bit of a flashy up and down kind of topic, has that hampered in a way the potential view of the value of blockchain? Like some people have written it off because it seems kind of flash in the pan.
Yeah. Well, it's highly speculative.
Right.
With Bitcoin having the news and other cryptocurrencies, you have countries out there talking about They're going to have a national cryptocurrency, and you have, literally we here at the conference, just within the travel space. I mean, I was looking at probably 5 or 6 different companies that are basically offering the business model for free, meaning being able to book with hotels, kind of like an online travel agent.
Right.
Do all of that for free, 0 commission, 0 booking fee, reward them like I talked about, but then also then base their business model about revenue and appreciation and value on their crypto.
Right.
So totally different. And we saw this in the boom with like advertising. I mean, we didn't really even know advertising was a business model that you could sustain a business with until we had some of, the Googles-ish, and they all of a sudden said, wow, I could put advertising on my site and I have so many people looking at it that I can monetize that.
Right.
Crypto is a new business model, economic model for us. I'm not so certain that we know how that's going to pan out. But I do think it does shade the business value.
Right.
Because people look at the business and they go, that's impossible.
Right.
You can't make money doing things for free. So it does confuse.
So you touched on this briefly, and this is certainly something that people talk quite a bit about, is there are some who have been trying to say, oh, it's going to completely revolutionize distribution in travel, and it's going to completely wipe out the middleman and some of the existing players in that space. And you pretty loudly said, you don't see that happening, correct?
No,
talk a little more about that.
Yeah, these middlemen are very smart, that they know how to conduct business and be in the middle of it to add value. Do they see this coming as well? Of course. Do they see the blockchain potential from a technology perspective? Absolutely. Will they adapt? Absolutely. They will find ways to. So for instance, think of Uber, right? Today, Uber, in the classic sense of a middleman, is really a middleman. Right. Because what they're doing, they're connecting the drivers and the passengers and providing that trust mechanism that, hey, I know Uber is on my phone. I will click a car and I can, they know it's me. I know the car's safe.
Right, right.
They are providing that trust mechanism today. Whereas in the new world, you can have that via blockchain. But I do think that Uber, whether they start using blockchain, they will find ways to get in the middle and add value.
Right.
I don't think it'll just be non-economic principles,
right.
But I think they will be forced to get into better ways. So I think this is actually competitive, kind of a macro view of this is around just healthy competition for some of these folks that have had a pretty good run, like the Ubers, like the Airbnbs, some of the crowd, sourced based company and so forth.
Some interesting things should come out of that, certainly.
For sure.
So tell us quickly, I know IBM has a partnership with Travelport around blockchain. Tell us a little bit about what you're trying to do there.
Yeah, well, just to be clear, we've done over 500 engagements in blockchain. Just in travel, I was looking at it last night. We have over 150 currently going on. Wow. Proofs of concepts with large companies, small companies. So we have a lot going on. I mean, we're the #1 vendor. We've got a significant market share, if you take a look at that. So we're very pleased at the position we're in. And our technology with Hyperledger is very focused on the enterprise and the business rather than kind of the Bitcoin-ish areas. It's very focused in what we do for businesses and organizations and companies. Travelport, we've partnered with them, and I mentioned them on stage as well. There's 2 particular pieces we've started with. One is around content distribution, where I can leverage so the agent can actually put their content on it, can immediately be checked and have a good content mechanism from the travel supplier and the agent as well, right? So there's some interesting things on that. The other one is really then about the hotel billing and settlement process. Okay. There's some efficiencies that we see on that, and they're doing a great job of getting into all the nuts and bolts, and we're learning a lot. But the fact is we're partnering with companies like that, and I mentioned a few more on stage. Yeah. We made some pretty big bets. But Travelport for sure is one. They're a great client, and we're there to help them, push their desires in blockchain and together.
So tell us, if we're sitting here talking again a year from now at the Phocuswright Conference, what might we be talking about related to blockchain and what IBM is doing or what you're seeing out there? Where do you think this is going in the next year?
Yeah. Well, I think we're still in a very early stage, right? We've made kind of 4 big bets. While we have a lot of different engagements, we're working with a lot of different networks. I think it's almost up to 100 of different networks that we're involved in helping with we've kind of made 4 big bets in specific industry transformational column deals. One is around the supply chain. What I've been fortunate to be closely associated with is our partnership with Maersk in bringing together basically the supply chain of maritime shipping between the shipper to the port to the customs agent, the shipping, and all of that being able to provide events on the blockchain and then workflow as well going through it. So there's a significant amount of value that can be derived. We think that we can tackle this 15% drag just by the inefficient paper that goes on within the industry. That's one where we can have a real huge and impactful outcome. Great. There's 3 others, I won't go too much. One is about food trust, around making sure that you can trace food all the way back from farm to fork. So if there's any health issues, you can immediately go back with Walmart's our premier partner there. And we've actually demonstrated, with mangoes, going from 7 days to 2.2 seconds on a blockchain of identifying who bought it, where it came from, shut it down, save some people's lives. So there's a few others we're doing as well, but those are some big bets we're making too.
So there'll be lots to talk about if you're here next year.
Lots to talk about next year for sure.
And I would say, and for everyone watching too, I appreciate there's a ton of great resources on your website for those of us trying to still understand blockchain and educate ourselves. So that's very helpful to have those resources. Thank you so much for your time, Dee. Appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.